Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and tear down the exact hardware you're going to need to survive measuring extreme temperatures out in the field. I mean, whether you're heading into a chemical plant, a massive glass manufacturing facility, or a steel mill, the sensors you rely on are going to take an absolute beating. We are literally talking about environments hotter than flowing lava. So today, we're looking at exactly how your sensors actually survive that kind of punishment. Now, think about this. How do you measure a 3,000-degree Fahrenheit furnace without completely melting your equipment? Like, imagine trying to stick a standard thermometer into a blast furnace. The glass would instantly shatter, the liquid inside would vaporize, and, well, you'd have zero data and a massive mess on your hands. In industrial processing, standard instruments just fail instantly. So we've got to use a completely different, heavy-duty approach to gather this critical data. The really crucial point here is that we literally can't measure 3,000 degrees directly. You know, when you use a ruler to measure a pipe, that's direct measurement, right? You're comparing a known length to an unknown one. But for this kind of extreme heat, we have to go indirect. We figure out the temperature by measuring a totally related physical variable that reacts to the heat. And for thermocouples, that variable is electromotive force, or EMF. Basically, the intense heat generates this tiny little voltage, and we measure that voltage to calculate the actual temperature. So here's our game plan for today. First, we'll hit core sensors and types. Second, we'll look at the essential gear and accessories. Third, we're diving into the armor, also known as Thermowells. And finally, fourth, stress testing and mechanical properties. All right, section 1, core sensors and types. Now, the best way to look at these temperature ranges is kind of like tech specs for a brand new piece of hardware. You can't just grab any two metals, twist them together, and expect them to survive a furnace. Copper constantan, for example, tops out relatively low. Iron constantan goes a bit higher. But man, for processes hitting near that 3,000-degree Fahrenheit mark, you are strictly in platinum territory. If you drop a copper constantan sensor into that kind of environment, it is instantly gone, vaporized. When you step into a real instrumentation role, these right here are the top 5 industry-standard alloy pairings you are going to see every single day. You've got copper constantan, iron constantan, and chromal alumel. Those are basically your daily workhorses. Then you step up to your really high-end options, platinum with 13% rhodium and platinum with 10% rhodium. Their unique EMF characteristics dictate exactly where they can be deployed safely and, accurately. Moving on to section 2, essential gear and accessories. So this is the actual physical anatomy you'll handle on the plant floor, because you definitely can't leave those raw wires exposed. Notice the ceramic insulators threading right down the center. They are absolutely crucial because they keep the two dissimilar wires from touching and creating a false second junction, which would honestly completely ruin your reading. And then down at the base, you've got this heavy-duty porcelain connector block with screw terminals. That's used to secure the super delicate sensor wires to the much bulkier factory wiring. Now, here's a pretty wild practical engineering reality. We almost never run pure thermocouple wires all the way from the sensor back to the control room. Why? Because running hundreds of feet of pure platinum, or honestly even chromal alamo wire, is just insanely expensive. So instead, we use what are called lead extension wires. These are made from way cheaper alloys like iron or copper nickel mix that just so happen to have a nearly identical temperature EMF profile to the expensive wires, at least at lower temperatures. It's this brilliant little hack that saves factories thousands of dollars without sacrificing any accuracy. All right, section 3, the armor or thermal wells. You can basically think of a thermal well as the ultimate heavy-duty phone case for your sensor. By definition, it's this protective sleeve that extends right down into a flowing pipe or a chemical tank. It acts as the vital armor that separates your delicate thermocouple from highly aggressive corrosive chemicals, severe oxidation, and just the sheer mechanical destruction of fast-moving fluids or debris. Honestly, without it, your sensor wouldn't last a single day. And this armor actually scales up depending on just how brutal the environment gets. For example, a standard closed-in thermal well is totally fine for measuring gas in a basic furnace. But for the absolute worst-case scenarios, we're talking severely corrosive molten glass sitting at over 2,000 degrees, we actually stack a secondary thermal well right over the primary one. This double layering stops the entire assembly from sagging under that extreme heat, and it makes sure the whole thing stays totally gas-tight. But remember, in engineering, literally everything has a cost. Adding all this thick, heavy armor comes with a massive engineering trade-off. It increases the thermal mass of the sensor. In process control, we call this increasing the time constant, which basically just means lag. By adding a Thermowell, your temperature readings are going to lag behind the actual process changes. slowing the sensor's response time down to roughly 6 to 20 seconds. So if your reactor temperature spikes instantly, your control room won't even see it for several seconds. You absolutely have to account for that lag when you're designing your system. Finally, Section 4, Stress Testing and Mechanical Properties. Okay, so we know we definitely need a thermal well, but when you're speccing out a new one for a plant, you have to evaluate the material against 5 critical failure points. First, it needs resistance to corrosion and oxidation. Second, it has to survive mechanical shock, like things physically hitting it. Third, thermal shock from sudden temperature swings. Fourth, it has to resist gas leakage. And fifth, of course, it just needs raw mechanical strength. Trying to balance those 5 properties? That's honestly the hardest part of the job. Consider this breakdown your absolute ultimate cheat sheet for surviving out in the field. Look at the trade-offs here. Metals, like iron or steel, have excellent thermal shock resistance. You can plunge them straight into a cold liquid and they will not care. But they are surprisingly terrible at stopping aggressive gases from diffusing right through their walls and eating away at the sensor. Ceramics, like porcelain, are the exact opposite. They are completely gas-tight, but their thermal shock resistance is awful. If the temperature changes too fast, they will literally shatter into pieces inside the tank. So, as you eventually step out onto the factory floor, I want you to keep this puzzle in mind. If you're tasked with designing a sensor for a chemical reactor that has intense thermal shock and highly corrosive, penetrating gases, how would you build its armor? Would you use a metal primary well and a ceramic secondary well? Do you accept a way longer time lag just to get that double-layered protection? Balancing those exact weaknesses to build an indestructible sensor is the real art of process instrumentation. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and keep questioning how things work.